Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we're going to be continuing our mod highlight series, where once again we'll be looking at OVN Lost Factions combined with the expanded roster series. 3 mods combined from their respective series which allow us to play as the Chaos Dwarfs, the Dawi-Zharr. Both mod teams have recreated the Dawi-Zharr in their vision, and it looks and feels like what we should expect in Total War Warhammer 3, or at least I hope so. Sure, in terms of looks, some of the models themselves don't look as great as can be imagined, but then again, obviously there are some limitations with the game engine and how models are imported and so on, but the Dawi-Zharr themselves are an incredibly popular faction, and loads of people are waiting to play them, so why not try it out in its mod format, which the race has been created in a fan-made but very lore-friendly way. But let's not waste any more time and jump right in. Your campaign will begin in the Plain of Bones, a region in the far eastern portions of the Mortal Empire's campaign. Your faction is the only Chaos Dwarf faction in the whole game, so you will have a lack of potential allies. Other than that, you are surrounded by elves, Skaven, greenskins, and your former brethren, the Dawi. You'll start with a minor settlement, which is in its second tier. This is by all means not an easy start, but it is a fun one, as of course the Dawi-Zharr themselves are very limited in number. The faction effects are as follows. Casualties captured post-battle are increased by 30%. Income from raiding faction-wide is increased by 15%. Income from slaves is increased by 25%. And slave decline rate is decreased by 20%. Now you might be a bit worried because, well yeah, slavery, it's one of those mechanics which is used a lot and doesn't really bring a lot to the table. Thankfully, however, the slavery mechanic through this mod has been given a complete and utter overhaul. The general basis for slavery in Total War Warhammer still works the same way for the Chaos Dwarfs. However, you will notice that we have a slave tribute tab. So how this works is that the slaves that you have captured also act as a form of currency, and you may send these slaves as tribute to other famously known Chaos Dwarfs. Each time you do so, you'll unlock different faction benefits, sometimes even units. But by reaching the final tier of each respective lord, you will unlock the lord themselves, meaning that with this mechanic, you have access to not only 1 legendary lord, but 4 in total. Of course, how it works is that at the beginning you can send a small amount of slaves, but as you progress through the tiers, you will have to send more and more. It doesn't really take too long to unlock these legendary characters. Naturally, if you're focusing on being quite aggressive in your playstyle, you should unlock every single legendary character within 100 turns or so. However, it can go much faster if you decide to take 1 or 2 sack cities where you could just constantly sack in an effort to get more and more slaves. But now we'll look towards the construction tab. As you can see, it's very stylized in the form for the Chaos Dwarfs. There are various different buildings, mostly focusing around recruitment of Chaos Dwarfs themselves, the various races that comprise of their slaves, and a few buildings which focus around slavery itself. The army itself is quite varied, but we'll look at that later on in the video. There are a decent amount of buildings that you can construct, and more or less you should be able to get almost all of them should you focus around conquering 4 provinces, and spreading around your buildings through all the different settlements. However, some of them will become quite situational, and you won't really need them later on in late game. The technology tree is very familiar to those acquainted to the Warriors of Chaos, but don't worry and don't feel a sense of PTSD. The tree itself is actually quite thorough and offers bonuses throughout all the different branches. My only real issue with this is that I heavily dislike the Warriors of Chaos tree. It feels like it's just too samey, too bland, and I'm not really a fan of spending way too much income on unlocking branches for certain technologies. It's just a bit much for me. This is a personal thing. It's nothing against the mod itself, but I just find it a bit too much. I dislike the Warriors of Chaos one much more than I dislike this one. At least this one has some sort of purpose. Going back to the slavery mechanic, you'll notice that you can unlock certain buffs and benefits towards your faction. What's showing on screen right now are the benefits that you can unlock after you have completed the slavery trade with all the possible legendary lords. Of course, these benefits might seem like a tad much, but you also have to take into account that, well, you most likely will unlock all 3 different benefits by the time that you start steamrolling into your campaigns. This is a regular occurrence, isn't it? So it's not like you're gonna get too powerful too quickly. Of course, once again, you can cheese it and have it very early on, as you can see on my campaign. This is turn 37 and I've unlocked everything, and that's purely because I had 2 sack cities that I was constantly attacking. And also I was playing in an easier difficulty just to show off this mod. In harder difficulties, this is obviously not going to be so easy, as you are all aware that the harder difficulty you play on, the more than likely chance that random AI factions will begin to declare war on you. As stated before, you have access to 4 unique legendary lords created for this mod. First, we'll have a look at Reichoff the Ashen, a melee-based Lore of Fire wizard, which is a very decent hybrid in all honesty. The character is heavily armored and benefits from boosting up the melee attack damage of your dwarf warriors. Not only that, but it dramatically reduces their upkeep. His unique skill tree also focuses around buffing up Chaos Dwarf monsters and dramatically increasing the devastating ability of Chaos Dwarf ranged and artillery units. Next we have Zarta the Black, a rather interesting Chaos Legendary Lord because he doesn't focus around Chaos Dwarfs themselves, but rather an army of slaves. With this character, your army composition is expected to be slaves, hobgoblins and so on. You'll be able to buff them up quite dramatically, to the point where hobgoblins might actually be useful, or at the very least where they're not really costing that much upkeep, so you might as well have a free army just to defend cities. Next we have Reichoff the Unbreakable, a melee-based lord who focuses around anti-magic and the buffing of elite infantry. This character and his armies are your basic immovable object, the type of army you'll want holding down an army of greenskins or Skaven, for example. The high upkeep reduction and high casualty replenishment for immortals works incredibly well here. And lastly, we have Warhammer Skullcrusher, which is the legendary lord you will begin your campaign with. This is a ranged base legendary lord character, however it falls more with the traditional sense of the Dawi too, as you'll have access to demonic rune forging. Yes, a bit more different to what the Dawi normally have, as they have normal rune forging, but it's a nice little throwback. The character itself is built for both melee and ranged combat, and the runes themselves act in a very similar way to the dwarfs, that being in the form of buffs. Of course, there are standard lords that you may recruit, the first being the Chaos Dwarf Overlord. Very much like Skullcrusher, this is a melee/range lord hybrid, which also has access to demonic rune forging, so we won't have to go too much into this. Next we have the Sorcerer Prophet, which is the Chaos Dwarf Caster Lord as can be expected, a melee caster hybrid which can hold itself off in the battlefield. You have access to different laws of magic depending on who you recruit, the Law of Shadows, the Law of Metal, and the Law of Fire for example. My only real complaint here is no custom Law of Hashut. And as we can already see on screen, the last generic Lord character is that of the Bull Centaur Lord, your equivalent to a cavalry based lord, as this is obviously a centaur type character. This is a hard-hitting melee character with buffs towards magic resistance and so on. This is in case you want to focus around bull centaurs and hobgoblin wolf riders in a very cavalry-focused army. It's not the most well armored, but it does hit very hard in close combat, and from my personal experience, it can take out enemy characters in a decent pace. Now, we won't go over the majority of the hero characters themselves. As you can imagine, what they do is to serve as a hero variant of the Lords. However, there is one unique hero character known as the Hobgoblin Khan. Weak, in all fairness, and fast because it rides on a giant wolf once you level it to that point. It's not the most impressive of characters. More than likely you'll have this character early on and use it in very situational cases, but in most cases you'll most likely use it as a form of assassination agent. It does have its uses, but generally you'll want to focus around the Dawi-Zharr characters themselves. On screen right now are the uniquely added units, heroes and characters for this mod. And as you can see, the roster itself is quite heavily stacked out. I couldn't even add in the regiments of renown because, well, there were just too many. The units added in are fairly well balanced, all things considered. In truth, you're playing a Chaos Dwarf faction, which is supposed to play more or less like the Dwarfs themselves, but also with the added benefit of large horde units, fast-moving skirmish cavalry, large monsters, and also with the use of magic. Yeah, this might sound quite overpowered, especially if you've been used to playing as the Dwarfs themselves, but I can assure you that the roster itself has been done very well and is incredibly lore-friendly. This is more or less what we should be expecting from the Chaos Dwarfs if and when they're ever released, most likely in Total War Warhammer 3. Generally, in most cases, most of the units look quite unique. It's nice to see the Chaos Dwarves more representing the classic look rather than everything looking more like the 8th edition units, which the majority for this mod looks more like the Babylonian feel rather than the steel cast armor. Some of the units in this mod, primarily some stuff which has been recasted from generic stuff, doesn't look too great, but the majority of additions, that being mostly the Chaos Dwarfs themselves, look absolutely fantastic, and it's more or less what I imagined them to look like in Total War Warhammer 3. The faction indeed is very fun to play, and I don't think I encountered any sort of game-breaking bugs as I was playing through it, both personally and obviously through these recordings. As stated before in the video, my only real issue, if anything, is mostly just focused around the technology tree, as in all fairness it looks like the Chaos Warrior one, which in all fairness I believe gives a sour taste into the mouths of most players. But other than that, everything pretty much looks good. I do wish that there was a Hobgoblin Lord character that could be used for the slave armies and so on, and it would have been quite cool to see the modders take on a full lore of Hashut. But then again, the mod itself is done so well that I don't think they're really that needed. It's just more of a personal thing more than anything. I do highly recommend playing as this faction, especially if you're interested in Chaos Dwarves. We still have no idea when Total War Warhammer 3 will be released, and to be honest, the way it plays and how lore-friendly the approach has been taken by both standard in army, aesthetic and playstyle, you can more or less expect that the official interpretation of the race would more or less be like this. And can I just take a moment to absolutely praise the slave trade mechanic? It's absolutely amazing, and it's how I envisioned slavery for Total War Warhammer to work. The vanilla variant is incredibly boring. Something like this could spice up everything so much more. But with all that being said, if you're interested in trying out the mod, you can find direct links in the description below. Please bear in mind that you will need the Expanded Rosters mod, the OVN Lost Factions series of mods, and a submod which links up the Expanded Roster and OVN together. The 3 main mods can be found in the description below, but all the other ones that you will need from OVN can be found in the mod description page. And as always, if you know of any mods that you'd like to see highlighted on this channel, you can suggest one in the comments below. Or might I suggest joining the official Great Book of Grudges Discord, where it's much easier to get in contact with me. A link to that is also in the description section below. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel has been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.